My name is Natalie Cole, 36 years old, single mother, architect, and the ex-wife who was left behind because she couldn't have children. 5 years ago, I sat curled up on the kitchen floor, holding divorce papers drafted by the city's top attorneys, the same men who once toasted our wedding. My husband told me I no longer fit his vision of fatherhood. 3 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. I didn't call him, didn't beg, didn't compromise. I left everything behind and began a new life, carrying the only miracle I'd ever need, my son Jude. I thought I would never have to face that man again. Until one day, a gold-embossed envelope arrived, addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton, inviting us to the wedding of my ex-husband and the friend who once held my hand at the fertility clinic. And it was at that wedding, in front of hundreds of guests, that my 5-year-old son, who had never met his father, stepped onto the stage, lifted his napkin dinosaur, and asked, "Do you remember my mommy?" That was the moment silence shattered, and my story truly began. The fertility clinic smelled like hope and antiseptic. I'd memorized every crack in the waiting room ceiling, every faded magazine cover on the side table. 2 years, 24 cycles of temperature charts, ovulation tests, and Andrew's increasingly impatient sighs. "Mrs. Hamilton?" The nurse's voice cut through my thoughts. I followed her down the hallway, my sneakers squeaking against the linoleum. Andrew was in court. Another high-profile case. Another reason he couldn't be here. Dr. Chen's face told me everything before she opened her mouth. The papers she slid across her desk blurred as tears filled my eyes. Premature ovarian failure. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "There are options," she said gently. "Adoption, egg donation. Andrew wants his own children," I heard myself say. My voice sounded hollow, like it belonged to someone else. That night, I made his favorite dinner, salmon with that dill sauce his mother taught me. He came home late, loosening his tie as he walked through the door. I watched him scan the dining room, taking in the candles, the good china. "What's the occasion?" He poured himself scotch without looking at me. "We need to talk about the test results." His hand stilled on the glass. "Bad news?" "I can't have children. Not naturally, not ever." The silence stretched between us like an ocean. He set down his glass carefully, precisely, the way he did everything. "I see." 2 words that demolished 5 years of marriage. "There's adoption," I started, but he was already shaking his head. "Natalie, you know how I feel about that. A child should be ours. Biologically ours." He straightened his cufflinks, a nervous habit. "Maybe this is a sign." "A sign of what?" "That we want different things, that we should—" He couldn't even say it. "Divorce?" I finished for him. The word tasted like ash. He looked relieved that I'd said it first. "We could both start over, find partners who can give us what we need." What we need? As if I was defective merchandise, a car with a faulty engine. I spent that night in the kitchen, sitting on the cold tile floor with my back against the dishwasher. The house felt too big, too empty, like it knew it would never hear children's laughter. My stomach churned with grief and something else I couldn't name. I thought it was just heartbreak. I thought wrong. The divorce papers appeared on the kitchen counter a week later, drafted by the city's best lawyers, Andrew's colleagues, of course. Generous settlement, clean break, no-fault dissolution. So clinical, so efficient, so Andrew. I signed them with the Mont Blanc pen he'd given me for our first anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. The nausea hit me 3 weeks after signing the papers. I was packing up the house, wrapping our wedding china in newspaper when the room started spinning. At first I blamed stress, then exhaustion, then the flu. The pregnancy test fell from my shaking hands, clattering against the bathroom tile. 2 pink lines stared back at me, mocking everything I thought I knew about my body. "Impossible," I whispered to my reflection. But the doctor confirmed it the next day. 6 weeks along. A miracle, she called it. Sometimes the body surprises us. I sat in my car outside Andrew's law firm for an hour, engine running, watching lawyers in expensive suits stream in and out. My phone felt heavy in my hand. 1 call and everything would change. He'd want to stop the divorce. He'd want his child. His child, not our child, never our child. I drove away without calling. Ashwood appeared on the map like a promise. 3 hours from Seattle, population 8,000, surrounded by mountains and possibility. The real estate agent, a chatty woman named Diane, showed me a cottage on Maple Street with a wraparound porch and a backyard that begged for a swing set. "It's been on the market a while," she apologized. "Needs some work." "It's perfect," I said, already imagining nursery colors for the small bedroom upstairs. I kept my pregnancy hidden behind loose sweaters and carefully chosen clients. My architecture firm back in Seattle had given me stellar references, and small-town projects suited my new life. I redesigned the community center, drafted plans for the new library. People here didn't ask about my past, just nodded appreciatively at my growing belly. "No daddy?" Mrs. Chen from the grocery store asked one day, not unkindly. "Just us," I replied, hand protective over my stomach. She patted my arm. "Sometimes that's better." Jude arrived during a February snowstorm, screaming and perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, Andrew's stubborn chin. The nurse asked about calling the father, and I shook my head. "Just us," I said again, and this time I meant it. The first year blurred together. Sleepless nights, first smiles, tiny fingers wrapped around mine. I built my business during nap times, sketching house plans with one hand while bottle feeding with the other. My specialty became designing homes for single mothers, women who, like me, were building new lives from scratch. Jude's first word was mama. His second was dog, inspired by the spotted puppy at the park. He had Andrew's analytical mind, but my heart. When he built block towers, he'd step back and study them like a tiny architect, then knock them down with delighted laughter. We were happy. Genuinely, surprisingly happy. The cottage became our fortress, filled with crayon drawings and mismatched furniture, and more love than I'd ever thought possible. Some nights, after Jude was asleep, I'd find myself looking at old photos on my laptop. Andrew in his tux at our wedding. The two of us in Hawaii, sun-kissed and ignorant of what was coming. I'd close the laptop and check on Jude instead, watching his chest rise and fall, reminding myself that this was what mattered. 5 years of carefully built peace shattered with a single envelope. Cream-colored, expensive paper addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton in elegant calligraphy. The postal forward had found me despite the name change back to Cole. Inside, gold-embossed letters announced the wedding of Andrew Hamilton and Caroline West at the Blackstone Vineyard in Napa Valley. My hands trembled as I read the date. 2 weeks away. Caroline West. The name hit me like cold water. Caroline, who'd brought me coffee during late nights at the firm. Caroline, who'd held my hand at the fertility clinic when Andrew was too busy. Caroline, who'd cried with me when I told her about the diagnosis. "Mommy, what's that?" Jude appeared at my elbow, fresh from his bath, dinosaur pajamas slightly too small. "Just mail, sweetheart." I started to crumple the invitation. "Is it a party?" His eyes lit up. "I love parties." "It's a grown-up party." I moved toward the trash can. "Can I see?" He made grabby hands, and somehow the invitation ended up in his small fingers. He studied it with that serious expression that made him look so much like Andrew. "Wedding," he sounded out slowly. "What's a wedding?" "It's when two people promise to be a family." "Like us?" "Yes, baby, like us." He traced the golden letters with one finger. "The man has the same last name as us, Hamilton." My heart stopped. I'd kept Andrew's name for professional reasons, told myself. Now it felt like a trap. "Is he our family?" Jude's innocent question hung in the air. That night, after 3 glasses of wine and 2 hours of staring at the ceiling, I made a decision that would have horrified the old Natalie. We were going to that wedding. Not for revenge, not for drama, but because my son had looked at that invitation and asked about family, and I was tired of running from the truth. He deserved to know where he came from, even if that knowledge came wrapped in tulle and wedding bells. I booked a room at a modest hotel 20 minutes from the venue, bought Jude his first real suit, navy blue with a clip-on tie that he insisted on practicing with for days. I found a simple green dress at a consignment shop, appropriate but forgettable. "Where are we going?" Jude asked as I packed our suitcase. "California, to see some people Mommy used to know." "Will they like me?" I knelt down, straightening his collar. "Anyone who doesn't like you is missing out on knowing the best kid in the world." He grinned, gap-toothed and trusting. The drive to Napa took 12 hours with stops. Jude sang songs, played with his dinosaurs, asked 1,000 questions about California. As we crossed the state line, I wondered if I was making the biggest mistake of my life. But there was no turning back now. The Blackstone vineyard sprawled across the hillside like something from a magazine. Jude pressed his nose against the car window, eyes wide. "It's like a castle," he breathed. Guests were already arriving, expensive cars disgorging expensive people. I recognized some faces from the old days, Andrew's law partners, mutual friends who'd chosen him in the divorce. My hands shook as I helped Jude with his tie. "Remember," I said, smoothing his hair, "best behavior." "I know, Mommy, I'm always good." We slipped in during the pre-ceremony mingling. I kept to the edges, Jude's hand firmly in mine. Then I saw her. Caroline stood near the bridal suite entrance, radiant in ivory silk. Our eyes met across the crowd, and every emotion flickered across her face. Surprise, fear, something that might have been guilt. She excused herself from her bridesmaids and walked over, each step measured in her designer heels. "Natalie." Her voice was carefully neutral. "I didn't know you were—" "We sent the invitation to the old address by mistake." "I know." I kept my tone equally neutral. "Congratulations." Her eyes dropped to Jude, and I watched the recognition dawn. The stubborn chin, the analytical way he was studying the architecture, Andrew's eyes in a child's face. "This is my son," I said simply. "Jude." "Hi," Jude said, sticking out his hand like I'd taught him. "You have a pretty dress." Caroline's smile wavered. "Thank you. How old are you, Jude?" 5 3/4. He stood straighter. "Mommy says I'm tall for my age." "Yes," Caroline whispered. "You are." A bridesmaid called for her, and she grabbed the excuse gratefully. But before leaving, she leaned close. "Does he know?" "No," I said. "Do you?" She flinched and hurried away, silk rustling like whispered secrets. The ceremony was beautiful, of course. Andrew stood at the altar looking exactly the same. Immaculate suit, confident posture, that smile that once made me feel like the luckiest woman alive. When the music changed and Caroline appeared, I watched his face transform with the kind of joy he'd never shown at our simple courthouse wedding. "She looks like a princess," Jude whispered. "Yes," I agreed, "she does." During the vows, when Andrew promised to love and cherish, in sickness and in health, I thought about another set of vows, broken and discarded. Jude fidgeted beside me, and I let him play with my phone, anything to keep him quiet and unnoticed. "You may kiss the bride," the officiant announced, and the crowd erupted in applause. Jude clapped too, caught up in the moment. As the newlyweds walked back down the aisle, Andrew's gaze swept the crowd. For one heart-stopping moment, our eyes met. His smile froze, just for a second, before Caroline tugged him forward. He'd seen me. But had he seen Jude? The reception was everything Andrew had always wanted: a grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers, a string quartet playing softly. At our wedding, we'd had a DJ and grocery store cake. I hadn't minded then. Now I understood what I'd been competing against. Jude and I were seated at table 12, the exile table for distant relatives and plus ones who didn't quite fit. Several of Andrew's cousins sat nearby, already 3 drinks in. "Mommy, there's a kids' table," Jude pointed out. "Can I sit there?" I hesitated, but the other children looked friendly enough. "Okay, but stay where I can see you." He scampered off, and I watched him introduce himself with that fearless confidence 5-year-olds possess. Within minutes, he was laughing with the other kids, building something out of napkins and silverware. "Whose kid is that?" one of Andrew's cousins asked, gesturing with her wine glass. "Cute little thing." "Mine," I said. She squinted at me. "Do I know you? You look familiar." I used to be married to Andrew. The table went silent. Forks paused mid-air. Conversations died. "Natalie?" Another cousin leaned forward. "But I thought you couldn't—" She caught herself, face reddening. "Life surprises us sometimes," I said, taking a sip of water. The whispers started then, rippling out from our table like disturbed water. I kept my eyes on Jude, who remained blissfully unaware, showing the other children how to fold napkins into dinosaurs. That's when I heard it. "Well, what do you expect?" Andrew's Aunt Patricia had arrived at the kids' table, wine glass in hand. "Children without fathers always act out. No proper discipline." Jude's face crumpled in confusion. "I have a mommy," he said quietly. "That's not the same thing, dear." Patricia's condescension dripped like honey. "Every child needs a father, otherwise they end up—" She waved vaguely, letting the implication hang. I was out of my chair before I realized I'd moved. But Caroline got there first. "Patricia," she said smoothly, steering the older woman away, "the photographer needs you for family photos." After Patricia left, Caroline knelt beside Jude. "Don't listen to her," she said softly. "Having one parent who loves you is worth more than having two who don't." Jude nodded solemnly, then brightened. "Want to see my dinosaur?" He held up his napkin creation. Caroline admired it with what seemed like genuine interest. When she stood, our eyes met again. This time I saw something different in her face. Understanding, maybe, or recognition of a future that might await her too. The band leader announced the speeches, and Andrew took the microphone. He stood there in his perfect suit, beginning a perfect speech about perfect love and perfect families. "Family," he said, "is the cornerstone of everything. It's about legacy, about passing on the best of ourselves to the next generation. Caroline and I look forward to building that legacy together." That's when Jude stood up. I watched in slow-motion horror as my son walked toward the stage. His little navy suit made him look older, more serious. The crowd parted, unsure what was happening. "Jude," I called softly, but he didn't turn. He climbed the 3 steps to the stage with determination. Andrew had stopped mid-sentence, microphone hanging loose in his hand. The entire room held its breath. "Excuse me," Jude said politely. Without the microphone, his young voice still carried in the sudden silence. "Mr. Andrew?" Andrew looked down at him, and I saw the exact moment recognition struck. His face went pale. "Yes?" His voice cracked. "Do you remember my mommy?" Jude asked. "Natalie? She said you used to be married, and you had a dog with spots. She showed me pictures." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Caroline stood frozen at the head table, champagne glass halfway to her lips. Andrew looked desperately around the room, finding me standing now near the kids' table. "Yes, I remember your mother." "Oh, good," Jude smiled. "She said you were friends once. I don't have a daddy, but I have the best mommy. She builds houses for people who need them. Did you know that? She built a whole house for Mrs. Rodriguez when her husband went to heaven." The innocence in his voice, the pure pride in me, broke something in the room's atmosphere. People shifted, uncomfortable with this collision of past and present. That's wonderful," Andrew managed. "Do you want to see my dinosaur?" Jude held up his napkin creation. "Mommy taught me. She knows everything." I finally reached the stage, my legs shaky. "Come on, sweetheart. Let Mr. Andrew finish his speech." "But Mommy—" "Now, Jude." I lifted him into my arms, his weight familiar and grounding. "Sorry," I said to the room at large, though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for. As I carried Jude away, he asked loudly, "Why does everyone look sad? It's supposed to be a happy party." I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Behind us, I heard Andrew clear his throat, try to continue his speech. But the words about perfect families and legacy sounded hollow now, echoing in a room full of people who'd just watched a fatherless child show more grace than any of the adults present. We made it to the parking lot before the tears came. I buckled Jude into his car seat, hands shaking. "Mommy, did I do something bad?" "No, baby, you were perfect." "Then why are you crying?" "Sometimes mommies cry when they're proud," I said, which wasn't a lie. "Not entirely." "Oh." He considered this. "Like when I learned to tie my shoes?" "Exactly like that." I'd just started the engine when someone knocked on my window. Andrew stood there, bow tie undone, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. I rolled down the window but didn't turn off the engine. "Natalie." He glanced at Jude in the back seat, then back at me. "We need to talk. Your bride is probably wondering where you are. She sent me." He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up. When did you— 6 weeks after the divorce." I kept my voice level. "Surprise?" His face cycled through emotions, shock, calculation, anger, something that might have been regret. "Why didn't you tell me? You didn't want children with someone defective, remember? You wanted your perfect biological legacy." I gestured toward the vineyard. "Looks like you're getting it." I never said defective." "You didn't have to." Jude had found his dinosaur toys in the seat pocket, making soft, roaring sounds. Andrew watched him with an expression I couldn't read. "He looks like me," he said quietly. "He looks like himself." "Natalie, if I'd known—" "What? You'd have stayed? Pretended to love me for the sake of your legacy?" I laughed, but it came out bitter. We both know that would have been worse. I have rights, he said, and there was the lawyer, emerging from the shock. You have nothing. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. No birth certificate, no acknowledgement, no relationship, just DNA you'd share with any stranger on the street. That's not fair. Fair? I turned to look at him fully. Fair would have been you staying for better or worse. Fair would have been considering adoption. Fair would have been not marrying my friend 6 months after our divorce. He stepped back as if slapped. Caroline and I, it just happened. Things don't just happen, Andrew. We make choices. You made yours, I made mine. Mommy? Jude piped up. Is this man bothering you? No, sweetheart, he was just leaving. Andrew looked between us. This family he'd never wanted and couldn't claim. I could fight this. You could, I agreed. Drag us through court, traumatize Jude, destroy your new marriage before it starts. Very romantic. He deflated. The great Andrew Hamilton, defeated by logic. Can I at least know about him? Updates? Why? Because he's my... He stopped, unable to say the word. He's my son, I said firmly. Mine. The one good thing that came from our marriage, and you don't get to claim him now because it's convenient. That's not what this is about. Then what is it about? He was quiet for a long moment. Through the window I could hear the reception continuing, music and laughter floating on the evening air. I made a mistake, he finally said. Which one? There were several. All of them. He looked old suddenly, older than his 35 years. But mostly thinking that biology was what mattered. Caroline's pregnant, 8 weeks, and all I can think about is whether the baby will be healthy, whether I'll be a good father, whether... He trailed off. Whether you deserve it, I finished. He nodded. Mommy, I'm hungry, Jude announced. I know, baby, we're going. I started to roll up the window, but Andrew put his hand on it. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. And you're right. He's perfect. Because of you, not despite you. I looked at him for a long moment. This man I'd once promised to love forever. Good luck, Andrew. With everything. I drove away, watching him shrink in the rearview mirror until he was just another guest at just another wedding. The drive home felt shorter somehow. Jude fell asleep before we left Napa, clutching his dinosaur. I drove through the night, stopping only for gas and coffee, eager to put distance between us and what had happened. We arrived in Ashwood as the sun was rising, painting our little cottage gold. Home. I carried Jude inside, his weight heavier now but still manageable. He stirred as I tucked him into bed. Mommy, was that my daddy? My heart stopped. What makes you ask that? He looked sad when he looked at me, like how I look when I see other kids with their dads at the park. 5 years old and already too perceptive. Yes, I said simply. He was. Why doesn't he live with us? Sometimes grown-ups make choices that take them different directions, but that doesn't mean you're not loved. He thought about this. Okay, can we have pancakes for breakfast? And just like that, the world kept turning. A week later, an envelope arrived, Caroline's handwriting, which I recognized from years of shared office memos. Inside, a letter and a photograph. The reception photo I'd missed, Jude on stage with his napkin dinosaur, looking brave and small and perfect. Natalie, I'm writing this at 3 a.m., the only time morning sickness lets me think clearly. Funny how life works. I'm carrying the child of a man who left his wife for being unable to have children, and now I'm terrified I'll lose this baby, that I'll disappoint him the way he thought you did. I owe you an apology. Not for falling in love with Andrew. I couldn't help that. But for betraying our friendship, for not telling you, for letting you find out this way. I see now what you protected Jude from. Not a father who didn't want him, but a father who wouldn't have known how to want him right. Andrew told me what you said. You were kinder than I would have been. He's been different since the wedding. Quieter, more thoughtful. He's bought every parenting book Barnes & Noble sells. I think meeting Jude showed him what he missed, what he threw away chasing an idea of perfection that doesn't exist. You won. Not because you got Andrew back. I know you don't want him, but because you built something real while we were chasing shadows. You have a son who announces proudly that he has the best mommy, who makes dinosaurs out of napkins, who faces the world with confidence because you taught him he was enough. I hope my child is half as lucky. Be well, both of you. Caroline. I read the letter 3 times, then tucked it away with the photo. Not out of sentiment, but as a reminder of how far we'd come. Mommy, look! Jude burst through the door, covered in mud from the garden. I found a worm! Can we keep him? Worms need to stay in the dirt, baby, but we can visit him. Okay, his name is Frederick. He ran back outside, leaving muddy footprints I'd have to clean. I looked around our cottage, toys scattered on the floor, crayon drawings on the fridge, mismatched furniture that told the story of garage sales and fresh starts. It wasn't the pristine house in Seattle with its empty bedrooms and echoing silence. It was better. It was alive. That evening, as we stood on the cliff overlooking the ocean, Jude's hand in mine, he asked, "Are you happy, Mommy?" The wind whipped our hair, salt air filling our lungs. Below, waves crashed against rocks, eternal and powerful. The happiest, I told him, and meant it. Me too, he said, then paused. Maybe Frederick the worm is lonely. Can we get him a friend? I laughed, real and full. Sure, baby, we can get him a friend. We walked back home as the sun set, his small voice chattering about worms and dinosaurs and whether pancakes could be dinner food. Behind us, our shadows stretched long on the path. Not one incomplete family, but one complete one, perfect in all its imperfect glory. The woman who'd sat on that kitchen floor 5 years ago, broken and empty, wouldn't recognize me now. Good. She needed to break to let this version be born. The version who knew that sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the greatest losses, that children choose their parents as much as we choose them, that love isn't about DNA or perfect families or legacy. It's about showing up every day, muddy footprints and all. As Jude ran ahead to check on Frederick, I touched my belly, remembering. One child I wasn't supposed to have, one miracle that proved the experts wrong, one perfect love that was worth everything I'd lost and more. Mommy, hurry! Jude called. Frederick is doing something amazing. I hurried, because that's what you do. You show up for the worms and the dinosaurs and the hard questions. You show up even when you're scared, even when you're alone, even when the world tells you that you're not enough. You show up and love does the rest. And somewhere in Napa, a new father was learning what I'd known for 5 years, that perfection isn't about planning or genetics or doing everything right. It's about a little boy with muddy hands and a napkin dinosaur teaching us all how to be human.